DND players, what was your funniest roll one moment? Our orc was fighting a few guards on the stairs. I wanted to leap off his back and stab a guy at the bottom. The DM said if I rolled well I could land it, so I got a natural 20. Then he had me roll for attack and I got a natural 1. In true Jack Sparrow fashion I leapt off this orc's back like a soaring eagle and then face planted right in front of the enemy. Another was that we couldn't figure out how to investigate this castle without being seen going inside. So the orc wants to throw the halfling like a football over the wall. He rolls a nat 20 to grapple him and rolls a nat 1 to throw him. So he grabs him, rears back like Peyton Manning and deadass pelts him into the stone wall of the castle like a rotten tomato. Not a game I played in, but watched alive. Imagine a giant made of stone in plate armor, standing with his back to a corner. He was supposed to keep his eye out for assassins. All the while he kept rolling 1s on his awareness checks. And 20s for his AC checks. Imagine, if you will, 10 assassins trying desperately to ping this guy with poison darts, only to have them all plink off his armor, and the dude just standing there, completely unaware of any of it going on. We had used resources to get a ship to help us get back stolen cargo off another ship. A monster, flying type appears and attacks. Bard manages to help stun and make it think one ship is friendly. Plan backfires. Fast forward to party ship making it back to town. Ship's captain is accused of murder, theft, etc. And to save we have to roll for persuasion, charisma etc. after the trial. Rolled a 1. Ruined his life but luckily he didn't die. Was playing with my group of friends. 2 of us were stuck inside a ring of fire with a bunch of hostile goblins. One of the party members outside wanted to help us out so he decided to jump above the fires to get to us while doing a triple backflip in the air. So the DM tells him to roll 2 d20s. First roll is a nat 20, second roll is a nat 1. So he perfectly executes the triple backflip, but lands flat on his face and then a goblin stabbed him in the butt with a sword. We were fighting spiders and I didn't take any damage at all. After the fight I decided that it would be fun to kick against a spider's head and I rolled a 1. 5 damage and 2 poison damage. My character likes to gamble so the DM gave me a skill so I can flip a coin before I roll a skill check to get a plus or minus 2 added to my roll. I flip before trying to intimidate an annoying kid to stop being a nuisance, and because we might be about to blow up the building, maybe I can chase them off. I get the minus 2. No big deal. I roll a natural 1, so with a minus 1 my character gets scolded by an old lady for the next 2 turns. I rolled a 1 while trying to find flour in a bakery. So I found bread but no evidence of flour. Had to get someone to help me. I regularly roll a 1 for perception checks. So my teammates have to come physically grab my character or he'll wander off, or stay behind while they escape from the battle we are currently losing. I was dungeons mastering and one guy's, whose character was baldy, wanted to make coffee. Got decent rolls and he was a pot of coffee. He goes I want to splash a wolf with my boiling hot coffee and rolls a 1. He drops the coffee pot and it shatters, the coffee getting everywhere. He had to go through the whole process again. His rolls worse than before. Yes, he did end up killing a wolf with boiling hot coffee. Was in a bar fighting with some dude over a table and a bottle of whiskey. I'm a barbarian with high strength so I decide to arm wrestle the guy for the table. Rage for advantage and 2 nat 1s. The DM decides that I still win but I smash the other dude through the table we were fighting for and the whiskey too. Not my campaign, but my sister's. Basically one of the players needed to go to a temple to heal. So he rolled to see if he could find one. He rolled a 1. So he ended up finding a place that looks like a temple but is definitely not a temple. Not D&D, but when my players were investigating an enemy-run hospital by impersonating a wealthy donor and his bodyguards. Their questioning was getting a little close to the bone, and the enemies were quietly reaching for their weapons and positioning for a surprise attack. I rolled passive perception secretly and the players all failed, but just as I was about to announce the attack, one character, a kind of ex-police detective, says he is suspicious of the staff and wants to actively roll perception to identify any threats. Critical fail. I tell him one of the patients in bed is actually an evil mutant, ready to surprise assault the party. He immediately reacts, drawing his weapon and whipping aside the bed covers with a battle cry. The party then has to talk down the administrator guiding them around, trying to find some explanation for why the character has assaulted a harmless naked old man in a compromising position. On the plus side, all the bad guys are now convinced the players are idiots and allow them to leave unharmed. Our rogue was a bit of a tinkerer and had invented a new type of crossbow bolt, one which explodes. It only took a few sessions before he rolled a natural one and sent a bolt flying off into the distance. That fire that burned down the slums was a completely unrelated incident, and really, who builds their buildings to be that flammable? Was playing old AD&D with some friends a few years back and we were a little rusty on the rules, particularly around coup de grace, which becomes important. Our party walked into a cave full of sleeping wolves. Figured, hey, this is easy. We stealth next to each of the adults, take them out before they wake up and then deal with cubs. No problem. All we need to do is hit them. Everyone gets into place and the surprise round starts. Fighter swings and a miss. Ranger shoots an arrow from the cave opening, nat 1 and the bow comes unstrung. Fighter cleric, me, nat 1 swing and a miss. Wizard shoots magic missile. This had already been called. We all called out shots, then rolled together, and an auto hit. Wolf yelps, wakes up the rest of them, and the ones in the back chamber we never bothered to look around and notice was there. 2 rounds, TPK. Our beleaguered DM decides she doesn't want to start this shit over again. Deus Ex Machina, and we're standing outside the cave about an hour earlier being laughed at by a god. Our DM decided that we were must-see TV for the Pantheon and they didn't want us dead yet because our fuck-ups were just too hilarious. This was not our first. Our party was trying to investigate a laboratory we'd been summoned to. The premise of the campaign is we got summoned into our D&D game, while everyone else is doing good on investigation and looking around. I roll a 1. So my cleric goes, welp, this is weird. And then I just stood there in the summoning circle eating fruit snacks. Okay, this is a bit of a tale, because there were a lot of ones rolled that night. So, here's my D&D group as it stood at the time. Grim, Goliath Barbarian, Big Muscles, Big Sword, Intelligence 7, Gets set on fire a lot, Ariana, Gunslinger, Custom from Critical Role, Tinkerer and Blacksmith. Basically the one Grim looks to tell him what to do when things require more sophistication than insert sharp thing A into Goblin B. Owner and builder of our armored wagon, Sal, perpetual hard luck thief. Really liked alchemical fire. Primary reason Grim gets set on fire a lot. Danny, dwarf fighter. Occasionally used as a thrown weapon by Grim. Gravel, dwarf cleric. Leveled up and discovered a whole set of really interesting spells about raising the dead. Probably should have checked with his god to see if they were kosher first. Dirk and Bark Bark. Dirk was our ranger, and Bark Bark was his dire wolf, and quite possibly the only competent person in the group. The dog, not the ranger. So, our thief Sal had a run of bad luck. He picked up a job off the guild job board in his downtime, badly failed a perception check about it, riddled off the burgle a nobleman's house, botched a few more rolls, had his face seen, and escaped with a pittance of gold. Turns out the job posting was a troll post by a rival guild, and he had just burgled a high-ranking Thieves Guild member. Whoops. So he shot us a message and spent what little coin he had to get the hell out of town, and holed up in a little farmhouse on the outskirts. And botched his rolls getting there, so the guild found out where he was. Nice. So we opted to mount a rescue before their henchmen found and gutted him. We loaded up on our armored cart, hitched up 6 horses and charged out of the city. Ariana and Dirk in front, Grim, Gravel, Danny and Bark Bark in the back. As we approached the farm we could see Sal was in trouble. He had been overwhelmed, knocked out, trussed up and thrown over the back of a horse as the henchmen prepared to leave. Seeing this, Ariana passed the reins to our ranger and climbed up into the roof of the cart to get a better firing vantage with her gun. The ranger, deciding this was an excellent idea, called for one of us to come up and take over, and climbed up as well. Now, there was an important caveat about the construction of the cart. Namely, there was no pass-through from the back of the cart to the front. To get to the front, One of us would need to go out the back and climb along the outside. Grim, with the next highest animal handling, and dumb enough to think it was a good idea, climbed out the back of the cart to climb around the side. Roll 1 on athletics. Immediately fall out the back of the cart. At this point, Ariana and Dirk had opened fire, and the henchmen were now responding in kind. One of the henchmen arrows grazed the leg of one of our horses, and since no one was driving we auto-failed the animal handling check. The horses veered suddenly right and picked up speed, heading right for a coastal cliff. Ariana and Dirk both botched their deck saves and were thrown from the cart. Hooray. Grim started running after the cart. As a Goliath barbarian his speed was stupid. Slightly higher than the cart, in fact. But it would take him a couple of rounds to catch up. Danny makes a try to climb out and get control. Immediate 1 on the athletics check, and off he goes. An injured Ariana and Dirk conducted a pitched ranged battle with the henchmen. Being prone they managed to avoid getting killed, but they're pinned down, and the horses bearing the other henchmen and Sao are leaving. We need to get the cart under control. Gravel decides to tie a rope around himself and try and get control. He secures the rope to the cart, climbs out the back, promptly fails his athletics check and tumbles out the back, now being dragged helplessly behind the cart. Grim catches up to the cart and manages to leap on the back, the first past athletics check of the night. The cliff is approaching fast, so he opts to stop the cart, even if it means repairs, and tries to jam his greatsword into the spokes of the back wheel. The wheel explodes, the car jostles violently, and Grim is thrown off again. Gravel does his best to drag himself back to the cart via his safety line, making his strength checks. He manages to pull himself up just as Bark decides the cart is a lost cause and nimbly hops off. Then the cart goes over the cliff. The horses hit the water first, the height enough that they are basically reduced to chunks. The cart shatters when it hits, but somehow Gravel survives with a few HP to spare. Grim jumps after him, tanking the impact damage, and ending up on the bottom some 20 feet below the water just as Gravel, also on the bottom, casts water walking. Funny thing about water walking is if you are below the surface of the water, it will propel you to the surface rather rapidly. So it was cast on Grim and Gravel, and they were 20 feet below the surface. So math was hastily done, and it was determined that a very surprised pair were propelled up and out of the water, launched about 20 feet into the air, to land on the surface of the water, which was solid to them. Grim was down to a single HP by this point. So Gravel decided more magic was called for. As a cleric, he was well equipped with healing spells to tend Grim's wounds. But he did not cast a healing spell. See, he had found some nifty spells in the cleric's spell table, and decided he wanted to try them out. So he cast Create Undead on the dead horses. Not Raise Dead. Create Undead. On the horses, which were a collection of disparate horse chunks which were floating around after the impact smashed them to bits. The DM 100'd him and made him roll for it, despite the spell not being intended for this purpose. Natural 20. Because of course it was. This resulted in the spell pulling together as much horse matter as it could, forcing it all together and reanimating the mass of limbs, heads and other body parts into a horrific undead horse abomination which knew only agony. Grim rolled a 1 on his fear save and immediately fled. Gravel shrugged, hopped onto his horse abomination and ordered it to swim him back to town. Meanwhile the henchman has gotten away. Danny was hurt from his fall and getting shot up, and Dirk and Ariana were finally getting to their feet to figure out their next move. At which point Sal trotted up and asked how it was going. Seems while we were busy failing at navigating a straight line, Sal had woken up, managed several difficult stealth and dexterity checks, wriggled off the back of his horse without anyone noticing, freed himself and snuck away. All without any help. They regrouped, recovered Grim, drank their scant supply of potions and skunk home, defeated. When they arrived at the inn, they received a missive. Apparently riding a necromantic horse abomination into the city harbor was frowned upon by the city guard, and Gravel had been taken into custody. He had used all his gold to bribe his way out of the city, and was now on the outskirts of town waiting for us at a certain farmhouse. Hey everybody, no chit chat tonight, just wanted to say thanks for watching.